No, it's not. Good, good. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to HYSEA's third episode in the Innovation Month. We are celebrating August as a month of innovation. And the Innovation Month is being driven by our Innovation Forum. Now, my name is Srinivas Rao. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of HYSEA. Now, most of you obviously are familiar, but I'll give a quick intro. We are a very unique regional IT association representing the second largest IT hub in India, Hyderabad, with close to 300 members, representing almost 90% of the IT workforce in Hyderabad and 90% of the revenues of the industry coming out of Hyderabad. So we're very proud of that. And all of HYSEA's activities for its members are channeled through various forums. Innovation Forum obviously is a very important one. We also have the other forums like SME Forum, Industry Academia Forum, CSR Forum, Infrastructure Forum. As the name suggests, each of the forum led by a managing committee member of HYSEA takes up activities relevant to that topic and see what best we can do for the community, for the students, for the colleges, work with government and giving back to the community. Now, obviously, as you can see, the Innovation Forum focuses on how we can foster innovation and entrepreneurship, how we can come up with new ideas, new thoughts. So we work with state government, central government, we help incubators, centers of excellence, we do hackathons, and a series of events, webinars, whole lot, And eventually, all of these culminating in our annual Innovation Summit, which will happen this year, got delayed from August to November because of the pandemic on November 5th. So coming to this specific initiative of August, what we felt was is a great opportunity to bring, taking advantage of the virtual atmosphere we are all living in, to bring speakers from different corners of India and abroad and present them to our members and give an opportunity to listen to their stories and their journeys, how they started, what they went through, what were the challenges they faced and what is behind their success. So we finished two. Both were consumer-facing entrepreneurial stories. And we are with the third today with Christopher Gali, founder and CEO of Graphite GTC in front of us, in conversation with our managing committee member and MD of talent for Deloitte India, Vikas Gupta. So without taking further time, I will hand it over to Vikas. We'll run for about an hour. And after the initial conversation, the floor is open for any questions. Please put them up on the chat window or Q&A window. And Vikas and Chris will take them up and we'll try to answer as far as possible. So thank you and have a wonderful next 1 hour. Over to you, Vikas.
Thank you, Srini, for the generous introduction. Happy Wednesday to all my participants. So happy to have you all here on this call today. You kind of taking time out of your busy schedule this evening and spending this time with us. As Srini highlighted, the purpose of this particular forum is to showcase individuals who are founders of organizations. These are entrepreneurs who have conceived ideas, created organizations, basis those ideas, generated employment, added capital to this whole process, and faced innumerable hurdles and obstacles, but still been relentless in driving that innovation agenda. And today, those are the stories which we intend to share through this particular platform. In midst of us today, we have a very wonderful human being by name Christopher Gali, who 30 years back started to pursue his American dream and left India to go to US and kicked off or started his journey of not just educating himself, but also working on his dream of creating large organizations, working on ideas, innovations, which were seen as big challenges by industries, and started to work on one after the other. He has some wonderful stories to share with all of you, and I'm very fortunate to moderate that session. So without further ado, let me welcome Chris to the session. Chris, if you can join us now.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Hopefully you can see me with my video now.
Yes, Chris, you are very clear. So Chris, as I start this conversation, lot of you happen to be from state of broader Andhra Pradesh, erstwhile Andhra Pradesh. A lot of our colleagues who are on the call and people at large here in this region always aspire for that American dream. And
Right.
you being that India Telugu boy, started to look at that dream and taken that agenda forward. So talk to us about what was on your mind 30 years back and what has this journey have been for you?
Great question. So I come from a family with a lot of people who lived in the U.S. And did their education there, and so I grew up in a family where you heard a lot about the U.S. and the life there and so on. So at a very early age, I would say around 10, probably 15. 10 to around 15 years old, I knew that the US is kind of the epicenter of the world. And then if I had to build something, I have to move there. And so, the US gives you an opportunity for creating wealth, but also gives you this opportunity to build things that you wanted, at least during those days in the 70s and the 80s. So I had kept that in mind and did my education towards that angle to end up in the US. Because do you want me to share my presentation now, or?
I think you should set up that particular slide and maybe just elaborate some aspect up there.
Okay. So I have a little presentation that we will we'll go through. So this is kind of like my career journey. So I actually grew up in Chennai but I come from a Telugu family, like you mentioned. So for people that are familiar with Chennai, I went to a school called Don Bosco, which was a kind of an elite school in Chennai. So it taught me a lot of values in life, quality of education wise. It's the same, memorize and write, but standards were pretty good. But I think the best thing that I got out of the school was the ethics. They always put emphasis on ethics. Once I did that, I actually went to St. Joseph's College in Trichy and did undergrad in computer science. I found that they had started a program in computer science, BSc, not BE. And so my goal was to move to the US. So I wanted to make my educational time as short as possible. So instead of choosing BE, I chose BSc. And I continued to do my master's there, finished that. And then in those days, outsourcing, all those avenues weren't really existent in India. So I decided to come to the US to do my master's in computer science. Between that, I worked in a company in Bangalore for a year, where I'd say to this day, still some of the most complicated work I have done was at that company. We were building a SQL engine or a SQL Server product. Um, so when I came to do my master's at Temple, which I would say is a mid-tier college or university, I found that I was pretty good at computers compared to what I was kind of facing in the U.S. Right before I finished my master's, I got a job at an insurance company that was in the city that the university was in, which was Philadelphia. It's in the East Coast of the US. So what that gave me was the opportunity to learn the insurance business. And one of the things that I thought I differentiated from any regular developers was the fact that wherever I am, I tried to learn the business that the company was involved in. And that's because when I was in St. Joseph's, I remember one of our professors who was a priest, he told us that software is of no value unless you're building something for a business to succeed. So you have to make sure that you learn the business and not just type up lines and lines of code. And so I remembered that pretty much throughout my career. And so I learned the insurance business, which basically gave me an opportunity to see where the gaps are in the industry. And so in 1998, myself and the guy that was sitting next to me, also named Chris, we said, okay, we see that the web is coming up. And in 1998, you have to understand, web was only used for e-commerce purposes. There was probably not many enterprise class applications. Web was used purely for people to go buy a book, let's say Amazon 1994, and or government side companies were putting up websites for people to pay their parking tickets or buy some birth certificates or things like that. And people were still using desktop applications on the enterprise level. So we said, okay, why don't we modify that and provide enterprise class applications on the web? And so we decided to do that. And since we knew the insurance industry, and when I say insurance, for people that are also in the insurance industry, it was life and annuity specific. So we started that. And it was obviously, just like you mentioned, starting any business is not easy anywhere in the world. It was a lot of struggle. I'll talk about that in a second. And so we started that. We, over the next 10 years, we grew to about 450 employees. And we ended up being acquired by Oracle. We had a 3-year non-compete after that. So we started something called the Franklin Mortgage and Investment. It's actually a bar in the city of Philadelphia. The city of Philadelphia is like the 5th largest or the 4th largest city in the US. And we were in the social scene, pretty prominent in the social scene. So we wanted to do something cool. So we saw this new concept of bar coming up. So we started that. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And once the non-compete ran out in 2012, we wanted to do something for the software world. Now that we had the capital, our own capital, and not go out look for something, we had the talent pool from the big talent pool that we had at Admin Server. We decided to put that dream in action, and that's changed the way software is being written in the world. And so it's a pretty big task. So we said, let's take that on as our next and final thing to do for the software world. During this time, I did a bunch of charitable work. In Philadelphia, there's a Franklin Institute, which is a huge museum, science museum for children. I became a board member there and was involved in some of the work in setting up how children learn technology. And also helped with the police department wherever they needed assistance. I just wanted to add that my inspiration are several of the guys that I've listed there. When I was a kid in India, I remember maybe around 10 years old, I had read a book about Andrew Carnegie, and he was a huge, did steel and a bunch of other things in the U.S. and became one of the richest guys in the world. I think he was second only to the Nizam at that point. And I'm connecting the presentation with Hyderabad, I guess. Andrew Carnegie grew up very, very poor in Scotland. And he moved with his mom to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then with a lot of hard work, became very wealthy. And then the great thing about him was he gave away every penny of it. He gave away 100% of the wealth back to the society. I think that was one of the things that I read and was thoroughly impressed. And then went on to find that was just not him. A lot of people in the US in the late 1800s became super wealthy only to just give away most of their wealth back to society. And Milton Friedman was a great economist. He's the very reason why we find that more than 60 to 70% of the world, countries-wise, not population-wise, are wealthy, and then the other part of the world are not doing so well. He was able to, so post-World War II, he was able to go around to all these countries and show them the values of a free market capitalist system versus a socialist system. And so all the countries that took up his advice are providing a great quality of life for the lower end of the population in each of the countries. And so rich people live comfortably everywhere, but it's the rest of the population that he was interested in how to make their lives better. And the other guy was a guy named Hyman Rickover. He was the guy in charge of building the nuclear submarine in the US, for the US Armed Forces. The reason why I treat him as my inspiration was everybody around the world told him that it was not possible to build a nuclear powered submarine. He just completely ignored them and went on to help the US government build it. And he was a good project manager. He wasn't a technical guy. He just said, I have a job to do and I'm gonna make sure I get the best people and get this done. And that's inspiration that has stuck with me throughout my career. Just to finish off this slide, these are the things that I think I have learned throughout my career. One is hard work. There is just absolutely no substitute to hard work. I still work 7 days a week. And a lot of patience. That is key to building a successful company because in a given week of, let's say you work 6 days a week, 4 of them will look like this is going nowhere, and 2 of them will look like, wow, I'm the greatest guy on the planet. So you just have to be extremely patient with that. The one thing that I always, when I always talk to people that are not founders versus people that have worked for someone, is that it always comes up, work-life balance. I personally believe that if you want to build something from scratch, you literally have to give up a work-life balance, and it should be all about work, and life in little spurts can come in. And that is, and that's my opinion. And whether it's family or if you're a single guy, which I happen to be most of my life. I'm married now, but throughout my career, I was single. And so even, you know, going out to bars, restaurants, I literally cut all that out when I was building my first company. And another big thing is when you come up with the idea, I see that 90% of the people will say that's a bad idea, or it's not going to work, or here are all the issues. If you believe in your idea, and I'm sure everybody has heard this, if you believe in your idea and you have done your proper research on why this is going to be successful, I think it's a no-brainer. You have to just work hard at it and you will be successful. Again, that I believe in the US, it's pretty a good chance that it'll be a success if you just work hard and not rely on other people. And the final one is if you have partners in your company, one of the key items is to have a really good relationship with a partner. Now, when you work with a human being close, that's not going to be an easy thing. Sometimes you may feel your partner is not working as hard as you. You don't know whether your partner's feeling the same about you, but both of you are working hard. What I have seen is that every person that believes in the success of the company works hard in some way or the other. And you just have to just keep telling yourself, for the sake of the company, I'm going to make sure that I have a cordial relationship with my partner. So the guy that started Admin Server with me, Chris, and we've been best friends since that company. You know, everything, personal and professional. We are very, very close. We live nearby. Our kids, you know, spend time with each other. And so that is the kind of partnership you want to maintain if you decide to take on a partner. And I believe having a partner or having a very close relationship with your senior employees is going to be key to your success. Because with that, do you want to throw out some questions to the audience?
Sure. Fabulous kickstart, Chris. And I think if I really think about it, the way you articulated the values which you got from your school, how that's kind of, really seen across the spectrum of your journey so far, whether the choices you made with respect to the work you do, whether to do with what you exactly do in your day-to-day work of working hard and ensuring that, you know, you're spending enough time in kind of bringing that vision to life, and broadly on relationships. So fantastic stat.
Thank you.
I think let's kind of keep kind of moving on into the conversation, and I think our audience is also warming up with a few questions. But I think it'll be apt for us to for you, if you can share at this stage, starting off a first idea and admin server in this particular case, I'm sure would have been a huge learning ground for you. What I also, basis my research, understand about this organization, that it was a very unique idea at the time when it was conceived. It'll be great to hear your perspectives on what was running on your mind, what was the hurdles, what lessons have you learned as part of that journey on admin server?
Absolutely. So, so we started admin server in 1998. So like I said earlier, around 1992, 93, 94, the web was taking up a lot of prominence. We all know web, including HTML, all that stuff existed since the late 70s, or in some cases, late 60s. But at least to the academic world, it existed in the late 70s. The great thing about the US is capital, right? And if somebody comes up with an idea, and if that idea starts spreading like fire, if there is no money to put behind that idea to build, you know, buildings and hire people and buy equipment, the idea just stays as an idea in someone's head or in like some lab in a university or a house. What I think the US does very well is just jump in, take someone's idea, jump in. And when I say jump in, add money to that idea and see how it can really change the world. I think that's the proposition that this country provides for the world, really. And a lot of Western countries or Western societal, cultural countries have copied that well. And so throughout the 50s, America dominated in manufacturing. And then once the costs became high, they started moving the manufacturing facilities to the eastern side of the world. So Japan and China took that over. Once that happened, there was a lot of capital that was left unused in the US, so to speak. So when information technology came, they started funding a lot of these companies to see where it goes, because nobody knew what would happen to the internet. I think even now there are some older part of the population that say, the internet thing, let's see where this goes. All right. And so it was during that era, a lot of companies figured out that building e-commerce based websites would be really powerful. Getting payment over the web instead of having someone go stand in a line and pay for whatever they're buying would take time. So by having it online, and I don't need to obviously tell anybody on the call the advantages of that, right? So during this time, I was an employee at a company called AIG, American Insurance Group, which is the largest insurance group in the world. I believe it was. I'm not sure it is right now, but it's up at the top somewhere. And so one of the things we worked on was building desktop applications for a lot of their mainframe applications, what we used to call as client server. And I worked with a person who was sitting next to me, and he did all the mainframe work. So basically either digital transformation from mainframe to desktop, or in the form of connecting to the mainframe to get data and have a desktop application process the data and display it or consume it from the end user. And so we became friends. And what we found was that if they had to do a digital transformation of what's called the core insurance system, it took an average of 3 years. It cost the insurance company $30 million. And you only had a 50% success rate, and success meaning going to production. And we were these young guys, 24, 25 years old, making a whole bunch of money with those 3 years, inside those 3 years as consultants. We actually, once we learned the business, we decided to leave AIG and basically go consult in insurance companies to build these or digitally modernize these systems. And at some point when the web was taking its foray into the software world, we decided, okay, why don't we build this system on the web so you don't have to go install that client server application in every desktop. It started as simple as that. We'll have one place where we can give an update. So the real advantage for insurance companies, if they come up with the insurance product, so their marketing department will come up with an insurance product, but it'll take the insurance company 3 years to actually make that product into software. And without having software, they cannot sell a single insurance policy on the market. That was the government rule. So in those 3 years, once the IT team converts that product to a software, the market may have changed. They can't convert the mainframe application to whatever they need for this new product. And so that was the 50% failure rate. So we said, let's build a web app where within a few months, you can build an insurance product online. That was our impetus. We quit our jobs and we decided to just build it on our own. So it took about 9 months to make sure for us to know that this web software will help us build this application. So because everything was new, there was no CSS for people that are technically enabled in this call. So there was no CSS back then. All we had was HTML. Java was up and coming on the website. So there was JavaScript, of course. So there was no Ajax and stuff like that. So everything was very, very primitive. So we built that. And so for 9 months, we built a very small annuity product. And we said, okay, this thing is going to work. So then we started looking for a seed investment. And we basically went around the US with a business plan for our company, and showed it to people. Well, mostly in New York. And again, at that point, people couldn't understand the concept of an enterprise software on the web, because they would constantly ask us, how many clicks will you get? And we would go, if an insurance company has 500 customer service reps, we will get 500 clicks. And they would go back and come back to us with an idea that will get you 5 million clicks a day. And we would have to tell them, no, you don't understand this. This is the future of software. It's going to go in this direction where every piece of software will be turned into a web app. And so that was some of the hard things that you had to deal with. But we just continued. Luckily, we were in London doing a presentation for an investment banker there. And the investment banker took us to a casino. And there we met an Indian gentleman who no relation to me. Obviously, my partner is American, so he had no relation to any Indians. I was the first Indian guy that he had interacted with. We met that person at the casino and we hit it off. And when we came back to the US, we kept in touch with him, and he decided to give us $1 million for 20% of our company. He happened to be in the insurance space in India, and he saw the value in what we were doing. So that brings me back to the concept of capital that I talked about. There is enough capital in India to build companies as big as Google or Facebook. How that has to be extracted and spread around is what the society has to do, creating a government or an atmosphere that helps that. The one thing about the US, throughout building all these 3 companies, government had very, very little hand in anything we did. In the new company, they are a client, but one department in a company uses our product. But other than that, we had very little touch with the government. We didn't have to get to get a license, you just log in 15 seconds, you create a company. After that, the only time you come in touch with the company is when you pay taxes. And you pay taxes when you make a profit. And so that is one of the things that we really like about the US, that it's very little interference with your business. I think that caused a lot of success. So the company itself, we were in Inc. 500 3 times, 75 million revenue in the first 7 years, and it moved on to about 100 million. And now, and 20 of the largest insurance companies in the world were our clients. So we installed this software in 36 different countries, actually. And we had 450 employees, all US based, because when we started in 1998, the whole concept of outsourcing didn't really exist in the US, or it wasn't predominant. So we just continued in that US-based employee structure. So our formula, since we were a smaller company, our formula was go to second-tier school colleges and hire the A students. A lot of them were first time to go to college in their families, hardworking, what you call blue collar people. And we really had a high degree of success with that. A lot of those employees have gone on to build their own successful companies now. The one great thing that we did at Admin Server was employee retention. In the 10 years of the 450 employees, we only had 6 people that voluntarily quit to go somewhere else. And that's because we had absolute freedom for employees to do anything they want as long as they didn't break coding standards. That was the only fireable offense. And as you can see, no one was really let go because they believed in it. Once you do that, when you're at a client side, when you have a bunch of your employees at a client side, they will take the company as their own company and solve every problem. So very few things bubble up to your level as issues from a client. So they had a very good relationship with clients. And so your company looks great to your clients. And how do you create that atmosphere? Extremely transparent. There was no concept of boss, CEO, or none of that stuff. We all, I mean, people talk about Google, everybody sits at a desk, there are no offices and things like that. That is something that never existed in 1998. Well, it did. I mean, Intel was the first company that did that, but it was not familiar to people that are starting companies in 1998. But we did that. Everybody sat at a desk. I didn't have an office. My partner didn't have an office. None of the C-level guys had an office. We all sat together. And that is a huge, huge advantage. They never had to feel like anybody was a boss in the company. Everybody had things they were in charge of, where they would direct people that are working for them in that aspect to do it in such a way. Especially we were hiring right out of college students, they needed direction. But that didn't give you so if you did something wrong and if one of the employees found out, they had the absolute freedom to call you out and you fixed it. And we even had never had a case where someone had to come to us and say, hey, I found this problem and this person's not listening to me. We never had that issue. And a couple of cool things that we did for the company was every year, since we didn't take vacation for the first 10 years, we did something where we took the whole company on a vacation. So we would come up with a destination. Our office administrators will go set everything up. None of the employees will know where we are going. And on the day of so it was a 3-day vacation. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and come back Sunday. We would just end up going to this destination. Until we reach the destination, we won't know where we are going. So for example, and that's including us, the founders of the company, only the administrators knew where we were going. So for example, one year we chartered an airplane, 180 of us got into the plane, and we bring in the whole family. So everybody can bring their significant other. And got in the plane. At that time, the company wasn't obviously 450 employees. So with family and friends, it was 180 people. Got in the plane, and until the plane landed in the Bahamas, we didn't know where we were going. So that was kind of cool things that we did for employees. So even though the company was making a lot of profit, we put that 99% of the profit back into the company. And the 1% that we had, we did things like mystery and intrigue weekend. So we never took the money as a dividend or a payback to buy fancy cars or homes for ourselves as founders. We waited to actually have an exit, which we weren't planning on until Larry Ellison called and said we would be interested in buying your company. So Oracle was researching into getting into the insurance software world. And most of the research organizations like Gartner and Forrester told them that admin server is your best acquisition. They came to us with a small number. We said we're not interested. We weren't really interested in selling. But in 2008, when they came back with the number that you see at the bottom, which is 125 million, since we were in the finance world, we knew that the 2018 crisis was around the corner. Because insurance companies were creating some strange products, and that kind of gave us some caution to say there's something happening, some bubble happening somewhere. We don't know what it is, because we didn't really understand the real estate business. So we didn't understand where the issue was. So we said to make sure that if we have a recession, we don't let go of employees. We need to do this, and so it was 10 years of a lot of hard work. And so we decided to take that acquisition offer from Oracle, and we sold to Oracle for 125 million. It was a fairly smooth acquisition because we definitely kept tight controls on expenses in the company. So the financial due diligence for Oracle, I believe, only took them 3 or 4 days. The technical due diligence, they did send in a big team that looked at every single piece of the software. We had written we had a .NET stack as well as a Java stack for this application, because we didn't want to be in that religious war with insurance companies on whether Java was good or Microsoft was good. So Larry Ellison actually loved that idea. When we met with him, he said, I absolutely love that you guys didn't pick sides. But once Oracle took it over, they did stop the .NET division and moved all the employees in that division, which we only had a small set in the .NET side, about 60 over to the Java side. Right. And so that's kind of like admin server, because
fascinating story, and a fascinating start to the journey, and very rewarding too. 125 million is not a small number, even in that. Right. I think just in the interest of time, Chris, I will have a few rapid fire questions for you, if you can kind of take that, because your journey is a very interesting journey, because this is just the first one. The second one is more interesting because, you had a 3-year of a non-compete with Oracle, and you did not let go of that opportunity. You've done something which is absolutely unrelated to technology or software, and that was a cocktail company. What was the inspiration behind it? What are the lessons learned in that cocktail company?
Yeah, so there were a couple of things that made us decide to stay out of the software world. The first one was like I said earlier, hard work. We worked 10 years straight, didn't take a day of vacation, worked probably 14 hours a day, neglected family, if you will. So we said, okay, the next 3 years, we know we're just in our late 30s. So we know we're going to get back into software. So let's take these 3 years to just stay away from software, so we can spend time with family and friends, and do all the things that we wanted to do. When we said, oh, when we have the money, we'll do all this, we should really do that and not forget about those things. So Philadelphia has a pretty good nightlife scene, but they lacked very high-end type of bars. It's a very blue-collared city as compared to New York or Los Angeles. So we decided to do something high-end for that city. So we looked around the country, and when I say that, that's really New York and LA. And said, okay, what is the next concept that's taking on effect? Just like the software world, when we said, okay, what's the next thing that's taking on an effect? And we decided to build a speakeasy concept. So in the 1920s, alcohol was banned in the US, which they later on found out was a pretty bad idea. and they repealed it. But during that time, there was a lot of illegal establishments selling alcohol. So that concept was taking on, and we decided to build a bar around that concept. And it ended up becoming one of the best bars in the world as rated by some of the magazines that are on the slide. So it's a fairly simple concept, and we decided to. So we didn't really work day to day there. We had a full team of people that are experts in the hospitality industry that ran the business.
And how distinct was these two businesses from a people perspective, from thinking through innovation, thinking through what exactly needs to be done for businesses which are absolutely very, very different?
Yeah, so they're completely different. When you talk about, I talked about retention, for example, with your employees in the last company. In the bar business, there's zero retention. You can do all kinds of great things for your employees, but there is no interest in any of that. Because they are just college kids that are getting a job to just pay for their college and move on to jobs. There is no loyalty, so to speak, which is understandable. But we were naive to that aspect in the beginning. We thought, oh, we'll have this great quarterly bonuses, and we'll have medical insurance. And what we were finding was we were spending a lot of money, but constantly retraining employees. So we very quickly had to readjust and become like every other hospitality industry or / bar business, and treat it that way. So that is one of the biggest aspects that I found. And the profit margins are not as high as the software world. They're very, very low. So you have to constantly keep your business innovative and on track to see your profits. Those are the two main things that I think we saw with this business.
Fabulous. 3 years got over. Franklin Mortgage Investment still continues. It still continues to be a very popular cocktail joint back in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia has a lot of culture. But you're somebody who stayed with Philadelphia as a city. Being in IT, you not decided to go to the Bay Area and started to work in that. That also is a very, very fascinating aspect of your journey. But Chris, talk to us a little bit about your latest venture, Graphite GTC. Low code, no code, India, we have lots of people who just survive on coding. So give us a bit of a sense of what was the inspiration behind it, what's the thought behind it?
Right. So coding is nothing but putting logic in some form on a disk. That's all it is, right? So whether you write it in lines and lines of code, or whether you do it in some kind of a different way, it's still logic. So what keeps a person employed or do something creative is really that logic from your head that translated into ones and zeros. So towards the end of admin server, we kind of analyzed how software has evolved. And you can see when the first program was written by Ada Lovelace, she took the Fourier transformation, I believe, and or Fibonacci series and codified it in like English language. And then Grace Hopper built Flowmatic at MIT, which became COBOL. And then you had the functional languages where variables were dispersed. Then you had put structure around it with languages like Pascal. And then object-oriented languages came around with even the behaviors or the methods attached to these structures. And then you saw the web take on a big portion of software development. And I just wanted to kind of put in perspective where admin server was. So post admin server, we found that the software world split into two. Back when you used to use a desktop, you could sit in front of one tool like Visual Basic or Power Builder or SQL Windows and you can build an application that a customer can use. When I say application, I'm not talking about systems level software. I'm not talking about software used to write engineering applications or compilers or things like that. I'm talking about business applications, something like a bank can use or insurance company can use, a hospital can use, application software development. You could build it with one tool. So you saw a high sense of productivity there. But come late 2000s, you had to know 5 different technologies to build one application. You needed to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. You needed to know Java or .NET. As human beings who are constantly, even without them knowing, they're very much into productivity. So we're always looking to see how we can do things faster. And so, yes, in some cases, people slow that down by saying, wait, if I slow it down, I'll make more money. But generally, those people usually go out of business after some period. So productivity always has won out in the world, right? Otherwise, we'd still be in Africa as, you know, in the Stone Age. So what we identified is that people said, okay, we're using JavaScript in the front end. Why don't we make that also work in the back end? So we can we can remove a few items in the skill set and build server-side scripting. So server-side scripting started taking a big effect on the software world, but it came with a lot of issues. Security was bad. Now you have to expect the developer to code security, and it's not an infrastructure level thing. The languages were immature because they didn't have true object-oriented programming and a lot of things. It wasn't compiled, so it wasn't scalable. How did the industry mitigate those issues? They spent billions of dollars in cybersecurity. They said, okay, immature languages, you can't write large monolith applications, so let's write them in small pieces. And they gave it a fancy name called microservices. How do you deploy 1,000 different programs together and not mess something up? They came up with a concept called DevOps. How do you take immature languages and stick in concepts like object-oriented programming? Well, let's add a layer like Angular or React to bring in that, or TypeScript. And to address scalability, they just added hardware, which gave rise to the cloud, right? And so billions of dollars were spent with really no added benefit to the quality of the software. We decided to look at it in a different way. We said, okay, the good design patterns have been come up with the academic world. And so we need to maintain that design patterns. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, scripting languages should only be used for front end, excuse me, and not have any logic. Whereas backend should be robust languages that can actually be compiled down to ones and zeros or binaries. So, and then one of the things that we found in admin server was that we had built all the business logic in admin server in XML, and these programs processed this XML and did the work. What we found was business analysts would go in and make changes to this XML instead of waiting for a programmer to come and change them. So what we found was if we make the look and feel very easy for non-developers to use, it's not that non-developers will become programmers, which will be great because there's a lot of shortage of that skill set. But what we found was the friction between business users and the developers is greatly reduced. When we say visually, if a developer writes a flow chart and then shows it to a non-programmer, they understand it. But when they show lines and lines of Java code to a non-developer, their first instinct is to get up and walk away. So we said, okay, let's put these two things that we learned and let's build something. And that's what gave rise to Graphite Studio and my second company, which is called Graphite GTC. We said, okay, we're going to have to build the entity model to mimic the business and not the data model. So a lot of developers, they either start with the screens or start with the data model to build software. And the very concept of object-oriented programming gets thrown out the window. So we decided to change that. when we build objects, the object should mimic the business and not mimic a data model. And I can, if anybody wants to talk about that more, we can, please ask the questions. So we saw that the industry has ORM tools like Hibernate and Entity Framework. So the database generation was taken care of. The process builder, that's business logic. We always draw flow charts to represent what we're building. So we said, okay, let's make the user the capability to draw flow charts for the logic. And then we made the UI drag and drop easy. So once we did this and you push a button, Graphite then generated exactly the same code that you would type. So right now it builds the whole Microsoft stack. It generates HTML, JavaScript, CSS. It also generates C# code for the backend, builds 2 separate projects, and you can actually open it up and look at it in Visual Studio. And the standards are absolutely perfect. The code looks like, you know, the world's best Microsoft programmer built that code. And so it basically builds the software and deploys it.
Right.
And so since it generates the software for you, you never have to worry that Graphite, if you want to get away from Graphite, you'll be stuck, which we saw with a lot of products like Power Builder and SQL Windows and Paradox for Windows or Delphi or things like that. Here you have actual code in your hand, you can move on. Of course, reduce productivity. Deployment freedom. We didn't decide to build a massive cloud infrastructure. We said it's going to generate and deploy it wherever you want to point it to. So yes, for some clients, we do have infrastructure that they deploy to, but for everybody else, they can deploy it on their local servers and whatnot. So basically what this means is compared to our competitors, you own your IP. And so that's kind of like what we have built. And then, so it took us 3 years to really build it. And we have some large customers in the US and some medium and small business as well. But majority of our customers come through our partners. So we have a bunch of partner companies that do the services work to build these applications. What we have found in terms of numbers is you're able to build the application a third faster. So if it takes a year to build something in traditional handwritten code, with Graphite, you're able to build it with much better quality in about 4 months. So that's the big takeaway from what we are getting out of Graphite. And so the industry now is filled with a lot of competitors. Salesforce and ServiceNow has gotten into the game with really substandard products, but they have the clout, so they're bigger than us. But it's the game of, you know, going and, you know, making it the next big thing in the software world.
Great. Hey, Chris, fantastic. I think speed is the essence, and obviously in the times which you're looking in, every organization is running behind speed and do things more elegantly and effectively. The question up here for you is, I know that you recent past, you've done some association with India. You have some small members kind of teams working out of India too, and you also engaging with academia. So you in recent past, you were sponsoring an event at IIT Delhi for some students and so on and so forth. The audience has a question which is centered around, if you had to do a similar setup in India, what hurdles or what lessons would you share with somebody who's sitting in India thinking through if they need to replicate a story like yours in India?
Right. So I think I touched upon that with capital. I think India has the talent, probably in terms of human ingenuity. I believe that Indian ingenuity is probably the best in the world. I don't have to expound on that because we know the talent. Once they come to the US, we see that difference. What we get in India that's great is the discipline. We are taught to work hard there. That's the only thing that I got out of India. Just absolute hard work without any questions. What I got out of the US was creativity. How do I think for myself? How do I not rely on what I read and think differently. I don't think that exists in India. That's a huge hurdle. Critical thinking is what people call it. That lacks in India because our education system in India makes us memorize stuff and write it. And again, I may be completely wrong because I haven't been in India for 30 years and I've only gone back twice for vacation. So and I'm going to talk about it in terms of my experience, because if I'm talking about hurdles of India by not even being there, that would be facetious, right? So in my experience, what I saw was that I went to a high school education and even a little bit in college where I had to memorize a book and write it. The person that writes it exactly as it is in the book got the better marks. In the US, it's the complete opposite. If you write exactly what's in the book, this is from when you're in kindergarten. If you write exactly what's in the book, they'll fail you because that's called plagiarization. So what happens is they're from a very young age, they're taught to think independently, read something, understand it, and come up with your own. And I think that is something that I notice. So we have a lot of developers in India for this company, unlike the other one. And that is a big difference that I see. But even with that, I think India, we were the richest country in the world for 1,000 straight years, right? With recorded as with people that can go and look back at GDP, India was a very, very wealthy country. And it doesn't get rich magically, right? Because they were innovative people. They knew how to cultivate cotton, how to create indigo, how to grow rice in massive quantities and spices and so on. They were very innovative. The culture in India gave an individual the capability to be very, very creative. And so that is always in our DNA. What has happened post independence was that culture was modified for us to think in a group. How do you do something for a group? And your individualism, I believe, was lost in India. Once we get that individualism, there is enough capital in India. Like I said, my first company, the investor was Indian, not American. He put $1 million in and he got $27 million in return when we sold the company in less than 8 years. So that gives you, we have the money, we have the talent, probably the best in the world, probably quite a bit of money in the world. Obviously, most of the money is it deposited in foreign banks, making other people rich. And so if we fix that socialist thinking where getting the individual out of the way, group think, I think India will easily become one of the top countries in the world in less than 10 years.
Great. Chris, I know this conversation and your journey is such elaborate one that it's difficult to kind of summarize all of that in just 1 hour. And I know we've kind of crossed a few additional minutes out of that time frame.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries about that. So I would say, just in interest of time and knowing that our audiences would have to kind of go for some other works too. Any final piece of advice and thoughts for innovators, entrepreneurs, and those who are aspiring to be those? Any final words of advice or wisdom you can share?
Yeah, just what I talked about in the very first slide: hard work, patience, and not be brought down by naysayers. It's really what you need to build something successful.
Perfect. Chris, thank you for your time today, and
I appreciate it.
for giving or sharing those 3 wonderful ideas which you've nurtured in last 2 decades, and very rewarding experiences for you, and certainly something very inspiring for the audience like ours to learn from it and learn from your American dream and see what needs to be done out here in India. Certainly, India is aspiring and raring to go all out to be self-reliant. And I'm sure some of the lessons which you shared with this audience today would be very, very useful in that particular journey. So with that, we come to a close of our session today. Thank you once again for your time today from HYSEA's side. And HYSEA, thank you for organizing an event like this. Nirja,
Thank you.
back.
I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me, guys.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Vikas, for an excellent session. And we look forward to our next one on August 26th.
Great.